voice.
Good evening, everyone. Today is Wednesday, November 9th, 2022. I believe it's November. It's 6 p.m. and this is the Gloucester School Committee, and we are meeting at Gloucester High School, 32 O. Johnson Road, Gloucester, Massachusetts. Consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. If you are calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer or device, there's a raise hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. I will state that the mission of Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful, engaged, lifelong learners. And I ask that you join me with a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. For the record, we have Superintendent Lummis, Assistant Superintendent Amy Pasquarello, Member Laura Wieston, myself, Kathy Clancy, Member Bill Melvin, Mayor Greg Berga. Samantha Watson will be a little bit late, and she'll be joining us here. Joining us remotely is Keith Minio, and Maria Pugliese, Recording Secretary, is here. Okay. We will move on to oral communications. If there's anybody in attendance that would like to speak to us under oral communications, now is your opportunity. Okay, seeing none. Comments from the chair. I'm going to just make a quick comment. I know the superintendent last meeting thanked everybody for a lot of the hefty topics we've been handling and discussing and moving forward over the past few months. And I just want to thank everybody for such thoughtful and professional and really good operating as a committee. You may not always necessarily agree, but I do find us all very respectful and really focused on what's best for children. So let's keep that up. Okay. Recognitions. Anybody have any recognitions?
I want to recognize Mr. Melvin, Kathy Clancy, and Melissa Texera for going to the Massachusetts Association of School Committee and School Superintendents joint conference last week. Is there anything you guys, which is great to go together. I'm sorry I wasn't there. Next year, I hope. Anything you guys want to share about just being there and being with a lot of the school committee members and superintendents, that sort of thing?
I thought it was very well, the conference itself was well done, well put on, a lot of great breakout sessions. I met a tremendous amount of people that were well versed in school committees, and I just thought it was really valuable as a school committee member to be there and be with other school committee members throughout the Commonwealth. So really enjoyed it.
Great.
Yeah, I thought their agenda and all the topics that they covered were particularly helpful. I mean, that is the professional development that we have as members. And sometimes you sit and you realize that our district is doing so many things well and that our committee is functioning really well. So that's always a nice validation of the work and how we approach the work, both from the superintendent and all the hard work that goes on from educating our kids to the way and rules that we have within it. And it really is nice to connect with people from other districts and figure out what they're doing. I had an opportunity to talk to a couple people about how they're doing their meetings with people physically attending the meeting, and the key is their local cable TV filming.
Yep.
So that's kind of the way that has been, they've been able to do it because the technology is just different, right? But anyway, it was a good couple days. I was there for a couple days.
Yeah, if I could add one more thing, Ben. One of my takeaways was how impressed I am without patting ourselves on the back, at how good we are procedurally. We do things very, very well. We're listening to other school committees. I was like, I think we got that covered. We do that pretty well. And I said that a bunch of times to myself. I was really impressed with that. So
It's hard. I mean, I work in a number of school committees, you know, and a number of communities, and it's hard to know that until you hear, as you said, connect with other folks and hear from them. But it's something that this committee has done, you know, since I got here, has done very well. I mean, obviously before that, but what I know, yeah, absolutely.
And I'll just add one more thing too, because a lot of they have general sessions, sometimes 1 in the morning and 1 at noon. And they're real important topics in education right now. And to hear people that kind of are experts or have been asked to speak on those topics are things that are all reflected in our district for, you know, ongoing improvement plan, and things that have already been brought along. So that's another validation that we are addressing right now.
Thank you,
I will recognize the girls field hockey team, which is in their 2nd round of playoffs outside at Newell Stadium. And when I left to come back to the meeting, they were up 1-0. I don't know what it is now, but let's all send them good vibes. It's a really good team with a lot of talented kids, and let's hope they continue on.
I heard a cheer as I walked in.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
that was for you. That was for you.
They said 1, 2, 3 Gloucester, so.
Okay.
Can I do just a quick recognition? Since you guys are talking about school committee meetings, I found work going in the mayor's meetings has been great, and I've got to know Kim Driscoll pretty well, and just want to give the congratulations to our colleague, a mayor and a school committee member, now going to be the lieutenant governor, and having somebody in that office who understands the roles we're in. It is going to be really beneficial for us. That's great.
Okay, next we have our Gloucester High School Student Advisory Council, and I see Chloe Gaspabovian on our call. Thank you, Chloe, for coming tonight.
Hi.
Good evening.
So this past weekend at the Crane Estate in Castle Hill and Ipswich, 6 GHS students were selected to show their work for the annual Crane Estate Student Art Show sale. And Gloucester's Ali Nicastro was awarded the People's Choice Award. The GHS theater program has their fall play, Clue on Stage, and it starts next week on November 17th, Friday, November 18th, Saturday, and November 19th, and tickets will be available on their website or at the door. The mental health ambassadors will go downtown next Wednesday to introduce to our local businesses the work that they're doing and inviting them to participate in supporting the Green Bandana campaign or advertising a sticker for all to see. Our guidance counselors have submitted over 500 pieces of application material to colleges on behalf of class of 2023 students, and over 60 college admissions representatives have visited GHS this fall. The baseball and hockey teams are both hosting food drives for the Open Door now through November, and the baseball team will be picking up at houses and bringing the donations to the Open Door. GHS has raised over $1,600 for 47 Thanksgiving baskets to donate to families in need. 14 female students from our local vocational programs, the carpentry, auto, electrical, and advanced manufacturing, visited the electrical union to see how girls in trades and had the opportunity to succeed today. The senior class had their semi-formal on Monday night, and it was very successful and enjoyable. And GHS will be hosting their annual blood drive on December 9th.
Could I show the artwork that Chloe mentioned in the
Oh, sure.
thing? Yeah, I actually have photos of that from teacher Emily Harney. Chloe, thanks for sharing that. First of all, if you just hang on, I'll show those on the screen. Here we go. Should be able to see this. So this is Caleb DeCoste, a photo of Caleb DeCoste. Folks might recognize that scene. And then this is from Emma Allen. That is a waterfront scene, but I don't think Gloucester, seeing it's a pelican, but you never know. This is from Janet Church. This is all photography. Brady Sullivan. Trilly Dowd, and that's Trilly himself as well. That's a photo. I can zoom in or not. But that's at Shannon Lou. Yeah, so people recognize that. Again. Oh, wait a second here, hold on. And the last one, I think Chloe said was an award winner. Zoom in a little bit. This is Alan Castro. I think that's her grandfather, but I'm not quite sure. That's not a photo, obviously, but it's a rendered artwork. I can see why that was an award winner.
Very nice.
Yeah, so great work by our students, support for the teachers as well, obviously, and really wonderful for them to be not only shown but recognized as well. So, thanks for bringing that up, Chloe. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Chloe, for being here. We appreciate it. Okay. Next item of business is the consent agenda. Does anybody have any items they would like to remove from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Okay, roll call vote, Maria, please.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
and Mayor Verga.
Yes.
We move on to deliberations on education issues and the superintendent's report. First up is,
I'm going to give a little few just news items,
okay,
and then Ms. Pascal will take us here. So I'm going to take us off on who talking. I'll share my screen. So, like we like to say, every day matters here in Los Angeles schools, and everybody belongs. And so tonight, just gonna give you an update. So, as folks know, yesterday was a day off for students, which means in Professional Development Day, we have it every year, typically on Election Day. And often a Professional Development Day for families is more of a quandary, a question. First, what am I going to do with my kids? And two, what are teachers and school staff doing, and why are they doing this to me? Which, as a parent of younger kids, I understand that. And sort of in the middle of the year, there's this day break, right? Well, just so want to help educate the committee, but also the public. Yesterday was a fantastic day for so many of our staff. First of all, it was incredibly well organized by Greg Bach. He's been doing this for years, and this is sort of his last hurrah. This Professional Development Day. There were over 70 offerings, and a couple things on that. One, the alignment with the plan for ongoing improvement was impeccable. Just in really great alignment with, and what that means is that a lot of really important work on instructional improvement, curriculum design at all levels, pre-K through 12. At O'Malley, so pre-K through 8 folks are mostly at O'Malley, and then high school folks are a little bit at O'Malley, but then largely here. And so at O'Malley, you had, for example, teams in each grade developing social science units. You had the English teachers continue to work on their piloting of their new English as they determine what the new English curriculum will be. You had work on social emotional issues. I'll talk about one in a moment with Lynn Lyons. But also, real sort of granular but very important ones: behavior and autism, self-care in the classrooms. An important piece that continues the ongoing work at the high school around instructional improvement and was teams of teachers worked in small groups on lesson planning and sort of sharing lesson planning, sharing a lesson, and getting feedback from your colleagues on that. And that's something that is sort of new or hasn't been done in high school for a little bit. So the folks did a really nice job with it, and so supporting their colleagues in sort of addressing a sort of dilemma that they had about a lesson they're developing or working on. We also worked on communication tools and communication outreach to parents and families. and then also a number of social emotional areas. I'll show some photos. And then one last piece, which I'll get to is all staff had the opportunity to work and listen to Lynn Lyons present. I'll share more about her in a moment, but really, really powerful lessons, guidance, suggestions, information around supporting students with anxiety. And anxiety on the full range of that. A kid who's worried to a kid who has debilitating anxiety or depression. And, she's just a very powerful speaker, and she's coming to speak to parents and kids on December 6th, which I'll show you in a moment. But wanted to show folks some photos. So this is Lynn Lyons here, both at O'Malley and GHS. And then she did at both places, she did a smaller group session with teachers who opted in. That is, I'll get to that. I'll get to those photos in a moment. Here's the social studies folks on the left, 7th grade social studies teachers working on unit redesign in O'Malley. This is speaking Spanish to your students, so developing some basic language skills to help with our English learners. 3D printing at O'Malley, so that you see O'Malley teachers there working with elementary school teachers on work to develop units with using 3D printing. On the right-hand side, we worked with community backyard growers joining us yesterday to help folks work on how to build raised garden beds in their own backyards, as well as the schools. On the left, you see K2 teachers working on Wit and Wisdom and our English language arts curriculum. On the right, I believe you see Assistant Superintendent Pasquarello leading some teachers in learning more about recertification requirements for licensure, making sure they're up to speed on that. And then we did have some fun sessions for staff. And Mary Berger, I see you smiling, you appreciate this. This was an impromptu band that closed out the day to O'Malley. You see singers and people reliving old past and old songs. You see that's Principal Fusco on the bass. He never passed an opportunity to play the bass and put on his leather jacket apparently.
And sunglasses.
We also have, but this was really part of also community building. An important piece of schools and in any workplace is folks make sure that they have a sense of connection and belonging. And so we had a bunch of sessions as well that helped build that for teachers. So this has been videoed by a number of people. It may be on social media, but we're not going to put it on our social media.
What you don't see is all of the staff in the back of the auditorium enjoying every moment of it and all coming together and cheering. It was really a unifying moment.
Yeah, it's great. Just the type of thing you want folks to do. Let me move back. Let me transition to Lynn Lyons. So we'd love to have your help through your social media avenues and your networks to make sure folks know that Lynn Lyons is coming. So I had the opportunity to listen in and sit in on the high school presentation yesterday. And I think Lynn coming on December 6th is probably the single most important parenting education workshop session that I think that folks would have right now in this time and this age. It's something I wish my wife and I, really me, I won't speak for my wife, I had 20 years ago when my kids were much younger. That would have helped me and helped them quite a bit. And it helped me avoid some pretty common pitfalls. But she's just very helpful in terms of helping families, helping our staff understand what anxiety is, how it plays out, and the whole range of it, but also offering real understanding, real empathy, but then also real strategies on how to work with students or your own children. Very powerful speaker, very impactful, and we're going to get help from our PTOs for communicating this out, school committee members, but just really want to make sure we have a good turnout so folks can benefit from this great resource. Another piece to know about Lynn Lyons is that she's been working with often what you have in schools, you have someone show up for one day. And we've been actually working with Lynn for over a year. She consults with our clinical staff every month, every other month, I believe it is. That was organized and arranged by Amy Cam. And so coming here yesterday, she actually really for her said it was like coming home and seeing a bunch of friends, and which she doesn't often get that chance in terms of the way she works with schools. But so I really value and cherish the way that Amy Cam and our clinical staff has developed the program with her and learning from her, and because of that, really supporting our students in more effective ways. So that's on December 6th, right here in high school. And then want to go back. O'Malley had a fantastic school dance last week. And want to really thank the O'Malley staff, school leaders, the PTO played a really big part in both the creation of it, but also the staffing and chaperoning. This was a very successful dance. No phones, no backpacks, and that really helped a lot. But also another thing, what you see here is some of the photo booth. So there's dancing, obviously, but also they had crafts and games in the hallway outside the learning commons and also in the gym. Because not everyone likes to dance or just hang out at a dance, especially middle school. And so kids had a lot of other options. And you can see on the left, those two creatures, they are, rumor has those are two of the assistant principals that shall not be named. I know it looks like Ernie and Bert, but, and then you get some kids just having a good time. Good, safe time, really. And one thing, we made sure there's no phones, and that helped on a number of levels. One, kids are really focusing on being with each other, enjoying that, and not being somewhere else on their phones. And also helped that we believe, or this is my inference, to talk to some folks that it just helped the kids realize that they wouldn't be photographed or videoed and then showed up later at another time. So that added, I think, a nice sense of safety for folks. So, but a huge success. About 400 kids or so.
Wow.
Yeah. So big turnout there. So thank you to O'Malley, PTO, and certainly the staff and leadership there, and the kids for being cooperative, safe, and having a fun time.
Okay.
Can I just ask, I have two questions, or
Of course.
one question on that. When not being, I mean, we know that this is a question, like if students have to leave their phones behind, how do they react? How do they react not having backpacks and phones?
It didn't seem to be any problems. So they're used to not having phones at O'Malley now. They've been doing that all year, not having them out or not having them available. And also another piece that they did was they essentially had a permission slip. So they sent information home about how the night would run to families, and then had signed off, they read it, and the kid had permission to be there. So I think there's also, it wasn't a surprise to anyone.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I think it worked very well. Yeah, it was both parent PTO leader, and also assistant principals. They had very similar messages about how well it went.
Great. Yeah. And the second thing, just so you know, is I already saw today regarding the Lynn Lyons event that like pediatricians are putting it out on social media, not just Gloucester pediatricians.
Oh, wow.
Right. So I saw it go out from Garden City. So that's a big regional pediatrician's office. So just to be aware that you might get, or we might get a big audience.
Okay. That's good. That's well worth it. And that's part of the partnerships we have, with pediatricians, Amy Cam, and others. Like, it makes sure people know about it. So that's great. Yeah, it's just going to be a great resource for families. So that's great.
And that's, sorry, Laura, you
No.
all set? That's part of there's also a resource night that night, is that?
Yeah. So at the high school that night, the resource night for agencies and partners and accessing support and care. Amy Cam's organizing that with others as well, and now is part of that. Thank you. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've already shared it. And I was amazed at the amount of people that took my post and shared it.
Great.
So it's really getting out there.
Yeah, that's really one of the real strengths of social media. Is that it can really just push it forward. It's great.
One last comment on the phones. My son went to that dance, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And they were not allowed to have phones then either. It was never a discussion. And getting them to enjoy themselves. That helped a lot.
Yeah.
So one of the additional things O'Malley is doing this year is asking for more student voice, and the students were part of planning that, and they were part of coming up with the rules, and the no phones was partially their idea.
Oh, great. That's great to know.
Because they haven't had dance in a while.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. All right, so then moving on, we'll hand things over to Ms. Pasquarello to give us the MCAS update. So, sorry, let me just say one thing on this, which is, so tonight we're gonna do two things, and we're doing it very purposely this way. 3 to 8 MCAS update, as well as the 3 to 8 professional development work we're doing this year. Okay, so what you just heard about, we don't hear more. Because those really our performance and academic achievement is obviously very tied to support skill development and training and collaboration of our teachers and all of our instructors, all our educational staff. So that's why we're matching these. And then 2 weeks from now, same thing for high school, high school MCAS as well as high school professional development. Another thing, just to sort of lay the land here, sort of lay the framework is it's a funny time to look at MCAS, and it has been for the last couple of years. And one of the things you'll hear tonight from Amy is, of course, the results and how we're sort of rebounding strong in some areas and compared to the state, and rebounding not as well in a few other areas. But also you'll hear about just statewide the absenteeism, and that is clearly making an impact not only here but across the state on test scores. So that's why it's a complicated picture right now. But it's a picture for us that we pay close attention to, but also sort of utilize as a point in time, but also, as you know, K-5, really closely to benchmark assessments and really use those to guide instruction, and now doing more of that at the middle school and beginning to introduce it at high school as well. But that's some of the assessment work that's for us more powerful. But every year, MCAS is a good benchmark to see what progress we're making overall.
Thank you. I'm sure you've all seen on the news, MCAS as a state, that we coming out of a pandemic, there's drastic changes, right? So we really can look at this data and dive in deep, which I have. But I think the best way to look at it is to look at it as telling a story. So we're looking at the road to recovery, and we're looking at rebounding. And we are rebounding in some places really well, and in some places not yet. And I will follow this with professional development, because that's to target the not yet, right? And to continue what we're doing well. So just to remind you, a full MCAS has not happened since 2019 for grades 3 through 8. In 2020, there was no MCAS testing. In 21, we took like a half MCAS. Everybody took one session. They didn't do the full thing. One student might have taken session A and the other session B. So it's not as easy to compare to 2021 data because it wasn't a full test. So I just want to point that out. And so there'll be a lot of times I'm going to show you a lot of numbers. We're going to look all the way back to 19, pre-pandemic. I'm going to show you some data in 21 as a frame of reference, but we're really looking at getting back to that 19 pre-pandemic is where our goal is. We're not there yet. No one in the state is there yet, but our goal is to go there. So these are statewide assumptions. This is what the state has given us, or summaries, not assumptions, excuse me. So in the 2022 MCAS shows some mixed results when compared to 21. So it's very, like I said, it's very hard to compare it to 21 data. It's showing that math scores are increasing across the state. It's showing that some ELA scores have actually declined since last year across the state, and science scores are starting to come up. We're going to get into our data in a few minutes. Statewide results are, when they're compared to pre-pandemic levels, there's substantial work we have to do. But in literacy, that's a focus that we're going to attack across the state, and particularly here, and we're already got some good headway here in Gloucester with an implementation of a new curriculum and pilot at the middle school. And absenteeism is absolutely, has still been a challenge, okay? And we're bringing back student growth. So with the absence of consistent testing, it's been hard to look at student growth with MCAS data. We never gave it up as a district with benchmark testing, progress monitoring. We never gave up the student growth. But to look at MCAS and look at student growth, that we're able to start to bring that back now that we're being more consistently tested. Are you raising your hand?
No,
Okay.
just trying to get comfortable.
That's okay. So I just want to remind you of the basic standards for student growth. So it talks to you about, so SGP is student growth percentile. You don't want to be 1 to 19 percentile. It's very low. They say typical growth is to be in the 40th to 59 or 60 percentile. If we're going to fill gaps and we're going to rebound from this pandemic, in a productive way, my goal, and I believe Superintendent Lemus's goal and all of our goals, is we need some high growth. So we're looking for 60% growth or higher. We're not there yet, but that's our goal. We are not we're rebounding in some areas, but we have ways to go, okay? So when we talk about growth, I want 40 to 60, they say is typical. We're looking for high growth. We would like to go higher, okay? Yes.
Sorry, is the desire to get to 60% growth, is that to kind of get us back to?
It will fill the gaps, but it also continues to push students. So you could have a high achieving student that just stays high achieving, but could have a low growth percentile because they're not being challenged and pushed to go further.
Yeah.
So that's why it's fun. It's nice to look at the growth percentile because it's looking at every child where they are and how much we're challenging all students to learn and grow, right? So then and it's also when we look at the subgroups, in order to close the gaps, we need a higher growth percentile because they have to learn at a higher rate to catch up.
And just a quick follow-up, are we gonna see how that growth is measured, or is it, I mean, what is the?
So it's comparing last year's data to this year's data,
I see,
and we're also going to see 19 to 22.
I see.
So I'm going to show you that.
And are metrics the same across the Commonwealth? I mean,
Yes.
you know,
So the growth data I'm getting from the state.
I see. Okay, good.
For MCAS.
That's enough of my smart question.
Well, you might come up with some.
Yeah, right.
So we're going to start with English language arts. There's a lot of numbers. I tried to shade them so that you can follow it a little bit. The darker shade is our 2019 data. It's the state in comparison to our district. And then in the middle, we have 22. And then on the right, we have, 21's in the middle, 22's on the right, okay? Don't start doing all the math in your head. I'm going to show it to you on the next slide. Okay, so if you look here, we see our comparison, our difference between the state to our district from 2019 to 22. Here's from 22 to 21. What I want you to focus on is these last two columns where we're comparing the change from 19 to 22. And what we're measuring in this is students who have met or exceeded the benchmark, okay? So any student who's met or exceeded the benchmark, for example, if I'm gonna go back just for a second. In 22, 44% met or exceeded in the state and 51 in our district for third grade. Does that make sense? Okay. So then we'll go back here and I wanna focus in on these two columns. And you can see that the state is 11 points lower than it was in 5th grade than 2019.
So before pandemic.
Before pandemic. Before pandemic, they are 11 percentage points lower. We are 16, so we are substantially lower than the state there. So 5th grade ELA, it's a concern. It's a focus for us, right? It's hard because there's a lot of negative numbers. So you want to be closer to 0 or in the positive is even better, right? Because 0 gets us back to pre-pandemic. Okay, so 7th grade, we also have a challenge of being lower than the state. But the news is not all red. So we're going to go here. And I want to point out that if we look at 3rd grade, we took a hit when 21 came. But we are coming back faster than the state. So the state is still 12 points lower. We are only 4 points lower. Even though it's negative, we're rebounding faster for 3rd grade. So that's a good thing. We are also rebounding faster in 8th grade for ELA. So this is a story of where we have to work and where we have to continue to grow because we're on the right track. Okay? You with me? A lot of numbers. Okay.
Yeah, but they're only double-digit numbers.
There you go. But I'm going into the negatives, so. For this chart, we're looking at subgroups, okay? And we're only looking at this year's data for these purposes. So the top line is all students, state, met or exceeded, grades 3 through 8, 41%. Our district 37, okay? So when we look in on that, hone in on that, I'm gonna go back a little bit before we get there. I want to point out the gaps. So if we have 41% of all of our or the state is 41, we have 37% of all of our students meeting or exceeding. We only have 12% of our students with disability meeting or exceeding. We only have 14 of EL, 27 of low income, and 25 of high needs. And you can see that comparison with the state. Yep. Go ahead.
No, this is just a clarification. I always think it's helpful for the people watching to explain, is subgroups sounds negative.
Yep.
So I think it's always good to explain that that's a state.
It's a state mandated, but not state mandated, state category.
Right.
And we track because we want to close any achievement gaps. And it's a category that is categorized by information we have in our student database, and we look to close any achievement.
And we're required.
We are required to look at this.
I just want to, it sometimes
Yes,
comes across as in a negative way. So
yes.
I wanna-
Well, it's not meant that way, and there's some positives in here too. We're gonna have some nice green circles. Yes.
Also, some students could be represented in a couple different categories, right?
Yes, so high needs is made up of students with disabilities, students low income, it's kind of, it's a collection of all of them. EL students are also.
Right.
Okay. So our EL students are underperforming in comparison with the state as well. So that is an area that we need to grow and really focus on. If you look, our low income students are doing better than the state, but we still want to get more equity going forward with overall. And then when we look to that student growth percentile over here, we're pretty close to the state's percentile, growth percentile. But like I said, we want to be higher. We are looking for more growth than that, okay?
There's a couple of things here also to add and just point out. I mean, if you look at all students, 37% meeting and exceeding needs, grades 3 through 8 in ELA, that's not good enough. You know? And we want to be real clear about that. The good news on that, and Amy will get into this a little bit later, is the work we're doing with our new English language arts curriculum is really meant to address that. You know? And the work we did prior to that with Reading Streets helped move us along the path. And Wit and Wisdom and foundations rather than geodes will take us to the next step. You know? And as you know, and we've shared with you, you know, that the rollout implementation of that is incredibly, it's being very well done, very well led, very collaborative, and we have a lot of confidence that the principals are paying very close attention to it and will support it, you know, fully. And they're both in their schools, but also across our schools. So our coaches are working together. Our elementary school teachers are working together through professional learning communities and other ways. So there's a leadership team. And then also, as you know, in terms of English language arts at O'Malley, we're reviewing that curriculum, and we'll be adopting a new one by the end of this year. And then also the keys to literacy work, which cross literacy across the curriculum at O'Malley as well. So those are pieces that we're beginning, and that's to improve academic achievement, improve engagement, and deepen learning. And all that should have an impact on any way we assess kids, but also in MCAS as well.
And go ahead, Sam.
I have no idea if you have any data on this at all, but I'm gonna ask the question anyway. When we roll out new curriculum, is there any data that says like when we should start to see improvement?
I can tell you through experience. Typically, to fully implement a new curriculum, any new curriculum, it's about 3 years. For the elementary ELA, for example, we are staggering implementation. So about half of our teachers are implementing it this year. The other half will implement next year. So by year 3, we'll be all teaching the same curriculum, and we will start to see students coming in to say a 3rd grade classroom that has had that same curriculum and the prerequisite skills the year before, and hopefully the year before that. And as it goes through, because it's a spiraling curriculum, as we go through the years, it will become more consistent. And as the teachers learn and grow, and that we provide professional development to support them, and we really make the curriculum our own, we'll start to see results. Yes.
Thanks. I think that's my biggest concern, Amy, is other teachers were rolling out, and I'm a huge fan of Wit and Wisdom, love it, huge cheerleader for Wit and Wisdom, but are the teachers getting enough time from a professional development standpoint to kind of begin the process of, learning how to implement Wit and Wisdom into their.
So that's why we're doing it slowly. That's why we're taking the 2-year implementation. And I'll get into all of the professional development supports we have when we do the next slideshow. But we are hopefully and purposefully giving them that time. Is it enough? That's our goal, right? There always can be more. But our goal is to give as much support and professional development and time for really collaboration, because the teachers are the ones that are going to own it and learn it. Yeah, so that's our goal. Okay. So to kind of revisit the whole progression, but through math, here we have our 19 data in comparison to the state, 21 and then 22. Again, I don't want you to get too hung up on all these numbers. If you look overall, grades 3 through 8, 39% met or exceeded for the state, 34 for Gloucester. Oops. But when we go forward, I'm going to hone in on this change from 19 to 22. And you can see 5th grade for math is also a concern because we are not bouncing back as fast as the state. Okay. However, we have 3rd grade where we are bouncing back higher than the state. We have 6th grade, 8th grade, and collectively grades 3 through 8, we are coming back faster for math than the state was. So that's a celebration. Doesn't mean we're done yet. Laura?
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember learning when we were in the midst of the pandemic, or as we were coming, or we're still in it, but that 3rd grade, that there was a moment for math instruction going from 2nd to 3rd grade.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me if I'm misremembering this, where there were because those are the current 5th graders now, where there were sort of basics that were being bar models, right? Were being taught at the end of 2nd grade. The kids who missed school, the end of 2nd grade, were already behind for 3rd, and that was a gap. I remember that we've been looking
And you're
at.
seeing.
Right, and so this is that gap. So I'm encouraged to know that we already knew this, right? We predicted it. You predicted it. I remember Greg and others saying, this is a very hard year to lose math. And that also makes me think that having predicted it, you will have ways to.
We are working, one of the trainings yesterday was on bar modeling. Like, we are working on it, absolutely.
And was there a similar thing for 7th grade?
So math in 7th grade, it was ELA that 7th grade is showing below.
Okay.
Math, we're not doing better than the state, but we're within a point.
So it's 8 sets more.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for remembering that.
Can you just go back one slide?
Absolutely. I got to go through all my animation though. There you go.
I just want to- So I guess when I look at this data, right, meets and exceeds, it still just doesn't make sense to me that even the state is at like 50% or lower. Like, to me, it just speaks to like, what are we doing wrong? Is it the test that's wrong? Is it the teaching that's wrong? I'm not talking specifically about our district. It just feels like it should be higher. I don't think you would necessarily have to have an answer to that, but it feels really frustrating to me to look at state data and still see only 50%.
Right, and now that's the average for the state.
Yeah.
Right, so there are districts that are much higher, there are districts that are much lower.
Sure.
So yeah, it's a tough test, but I still think we should at least be back to where we were in 19, but I am a little more optimistic than that. I want to be higher. And our goal is to be higher than that. And our goal is to have a higher growth and to continue to work on this. And yeah, we can look at the tests and things like that too. But we need to look at our students that are in front of us. And I truly think the growth and making sure they're growing academically, social, emotionally, just as being good humans, that's our job, right? And we're looking at the growth. Yeah. Yes.
So I know this is today's presentation, but in the past, I know they gave out selected questions to districts for sample questions so that you could start, you could see what was asked, how it was asked, and what the
They
answer
released some questions that we can.
Yeah,
get
so
you
and I
from it.
assume that's
Yes.
gonna be part of the work to understand maybe certain pieces
Yes.
of math that we either did good in. or,
So
you know, did
that's
well
the
in.
work that's done at the building level. And I'm happy to share some of those questions with you if you'd like. But this is the overarching review for you and for the community. But the work that school levels are doing, they get into the released questions and they analyze them. And is our curriculum addressing the standards that are being asked? Sometimes the language of MCAS questions are, they choose the best 3 answers and a student chooses the best answer instead of reading so even teaching that skill is something that we can learn from looking at those questions. That's something that absolutely we can do at the building level.
I don't want to, I mean, I almost need some time to just process all this, but
Yeah, that's a lot of numbers.
there's a lot of stuff, right? And one of the things that kind of hits me right off the bat is, we kind of use what the state's doing as the bar, like, okay, let's try and get back to where the state is. I'm not afraid to set the bar higher, higher than the state, say,
I want to beat the state.
yeah, right, exactly. It's,
Yeah, no, I sorry. I don't mean to-
No, that's kind of the gist of it. And I know today I was reading Superintendent Goals 2022-23. Goal number 3, strengthen instruction and better content, general education and special education. Almost like, that needs to be I'm not saying this, that needs to be top of the list to say, what are we doing to improve the content of what these kids are learning? And what can we do to beat the state?
Yes.
To become better than the state.
Absolutely.
No, just to build on that, yes, and I think if you're not hearing that from me, media, you're not from me, that the state isn't the bar. The state, to match the state is not the goal.
Right.
Gloucester can exceed that by a lot.
Yep.
And if we're working to go in that direction, I think our staff and our school leaders and our district office leaders, I think are focused on how do we continue to deepen belonging as the sound foundation. What that allows then is with high quality instruction and high quality curriculum that folks are doing that's aligned and it's working together to understand how to teach that curriculum, then we can go further. Another piece on this, and this is just builds on, I think, Sam, you asked this question earlier in terms of timing. Another way to improve skills and academic learning, and which then you see impact scores, whether that's local benchmark scores or MCAS, is through the interventions. So the second dose for students, and that's some of the investments made through the ESSER funds, and especially one example you've heard about is at O'Malley. With their, I think it was literacy intervention last year, they saw kids who were getting a double dose already in STAR 360, seeing the impact of that very quickly. Those students who were not doing as well, but weren't getting that interventions, were sort of progressing, but the ones who were progressing faster. Now at O'Malley this year, we had that for math as well. So that double dose piece, essentially more time on learning, is in addition to strengthening instruction and teaching, for everyone gets the tier 1 instruction. That really helps as well. And so we're able to do more than we ever have, both at the elementary level and actually middle and high. We have English interventionists at high school as well. So those two pieces working together is what accelerates scores.
And I certainly don't want to come across as sounding like, being accusatory or anything like that. I recognize it. I think we're in the best position now with the leadership we have and the teachers that we have, the educators that we have, to really kind of tackle this and say, okay, let's get to a
Oh,
better
I'm
place.
competitive. We're going. I'm with it.
Good.
And then not to be undervalued is the attendance piece.
Yeah,
Yes.
right.
You know.
Huge, huge.
It's important to not let kids fall behind.
Every day matters,
Every day
to
matters.
coin your phrase. Okay. So we did this. We are coming back a little faster with math, so that is a celebration. And then looking at the subgroups, and again, you said that looking at the state is 39% met or exceeded. That we want that higher as a state, and we definitely want Gloucester to be higher, right? So that's our goal. So I'm not happy that we're below the state by 5 percentage points. That we're gonna need to work on that. And again, our EL population, we need to focus in and give them some more supports. We are slightly higher for low-income students for mathematics, meeting and exceeding. And then the part I want to really point out is that growth percentile. Remember I said, who remembers how high I wanted it to be, 60? We have some ways to go, okay? So that's our focus. We really need to push our students to grow. For science, there are no growth percentiles for science because it's given in 5th grade and 8th grade, and they're different tests. But what we can say is that we took a large hit, dipped 12 points, and we are starting to come back in science for 5th grade and 8th grade. So those are good things. We're not back yet. We need to come further, but we are on track. And again, that's still only, we're equal to the state here at 43% meeting or exceeding. We should be higher. Yes.
Just a question. I know that the FOSS science program, what year does that, is this the first year of that?
That's a very complicated question.
It's a simple question, complicated answer.
Exactly. It's a simple question. It's a complicated answer, but I'll try to summarize. We did adopt the FOSS curriculum pre-pandemic, and we were starting to implement it. And then we went into some remote learning, shorter days, social distancing, individual materials, and hands-on science was hard to do.
Right.
So it was we took a large hit. A lot of teachers went to some online resources. We used some mystery science throughout the district and some other resources to cover and to teach the topics, but the hands-on learning was hard to do when we were in that kind of environment. We are getting more back to normal, so FOSS is coming back. Some teachers are all on board, ready to get back into that. Some are liking some of the online tools, which is fine. They were effective. They were effective because we saw some growth, right? So we are working to bring back FOSS consistently, grades 2 through 5. I have one first grade teacher that is also implementing it. She asked to. You're going to hear a lot more about this during professional development, and even you're going to hear about next steps for science when you hear about the BRACE grant that we received. So we got a lot of science coming, and the back to hands-on science is a good thing.
I just have personal experience that's having a very positive,
Yes.
that's very exciting for
Yes.
students.
And it was hard to lose. I mean, we lost a lot of hands-on collaboration in the last few years, but we're bringing it back.
You'll see that 8th grade is probably one of the places, middle school is probably one of the places where we do hands-on science the best.
Yes.
And I think this is the only spot where we're above MCAS performance pre-pandemic, is 8th grade science.
Right.
So that's really a culmination of those 3 years.
How much time in a day is dedicated to science at the elementary level?
So there's not a lot of time in the day. Our days are short, right? And so it's tight. We tried to have 90 minutes a week on science. Some grades, because of platooning and things like that, are able to do it a little differently. But the thought of the 90 minutes, teachers can do 30 minutes 3 times a week. They could do a 30-minute lesson, and the ideal would be a 60-minute lab. right? So they really could dive in for that hands-on. And different schools do it differently as far as implementation, but that's the goal.
How does that compare to other districts? You don't have to answer tonight.
Yeah, I think.
That's a question I would like to know
Yeah.
is how are our elementary schedules relative to?
That's
other
a
districts?
larger question, because you're also talking about amount of time, how long the day is too, right? Yes, so that's a bigger question.
Yeah, and I did find out at the conference how low our day is relative to many districts.
Shorter.
Absolutely. I mean, someone had 7-hour elementary days.
Okay. So if we look at science by subgroups, and again, the state subgroups as defined by the state, and we focus on this year's data, we are looking equal to the state, but we want to be higher. And our EL students, again, we really need to help support them. But students with disabilities were actually at a higher level than the state, also for low income and high needs. Those are good things. And then our change, we are coming back faster than the state, so this is good. We're actually above our students with disabilities, we're at 19, and we are back to even with high needs students. So science, we're doing okay. We want to do more in that. So absenteeism, I went back and forth on what to share with absenteeism because there's so much. And I had a slide and I decided to take it out because they changed the standards. So if you go on DESE and look, chronically absent in 2019 and 2021 was 10% of the school year. If you missed that, a student was chronically absent. For 2022, they counted it as 20%, but only for the year 2022. They're going to go back to the 10% next year is my understanding. So the data is skewed. And I think it's because on average, so many students missed.
And they had to because of the length you had to be out of school mandate.
Right, because of quarantining, because of close contacts we were still doing and all of that, they had to change it. So these are observations from the state about absenteeism, but they apply to us too. So statewide, students have attended less school over the past several years. The average student has missed 11 days in 2021 and 15 days in 2022. 18% of students missed 18 days in 2021 and 28% missed 18 days in 2022. I'll pause because that's a lot of numbers. Statewide chronic absenteeism for students in grades 3 through 8 increased in 2023-22 by 138%, 41,000 versus 98,000 students as compared to 2019. 1.7 million days of missed school because of positive COVID-19 test cases in 2022. And this does not include the days that staff were absent or had to be out for close contacts. 1 million other school days were saved as a result of state testing program. The state wanted to throw positive there at the end, just slide it in. But absenteeism is a problem. And when you look to our plan for ongoing improvement, it's in that priority number 1. It is something we need to really work on. Yes.
So just, I was having a recent conversation with a parent who was asking what the school committee does. And one of the things I talked about was the work we did on the new attendance policy. And she said, well, how are you telling parents that? And I said, well, it's in the new handbook. And she's like, you know, I don't know anything about this. So I just sort of took that the way I think she meant it, which is like, we need to know more. Parents need to know more about the impact of chronic absenteeism. And I think this speaks to like 1.7 million days missed of school because of a positive COVID-19 case is also like, parents, while they need to be educated, they also haven't had choices, right? Like kids are sick and families are sick. So I just sort of want to put in a plug to sort of start communicating more widely and more deeply about the impact of absenteeism, even understanding that some of this absenteeism couldn't be helped. So it's a delicate balance.
Yeah, it's not a pointing fingers. This is a reality.
Right.
Students have missed a lot of instruction due to being absent, or if their teacher was quarantining.
Right.
I mean, these are things that were out of our control.
Right.
But we need to move forward and improve attendance. The quarantine restrictions have been lifted. There's a different guidelines we're working under, so we are hopeful that we can improve on this.
Right. But I'm putting in a plug for some more communication.
Excellent. I
Put it
need
in
to
a
know.
plug for what?
More communication.
Which dovetails into my,
Yeah.
and I said it in my cliff notes, a little bit off track, but I was so impressed at the school committee convention when they talked about ways to communicate with parents and the use of animation with voiceovers from teachers and students. It was off the charts, the hit rates that they were getting, sending out these videos on kind of a dedicated YouTube channel versus emails about the student handbook, check your book, all that kind of stuff. Tremendous way to communicate, and all developed by Sudbury School Committee and a gentleman that was a newscaster for years in the Boston area. And I just think it's something we have to be more creative when it comes to communicating with parents. I know as a parent, I was not the most diligent when it came to checking on the school communications and what can we do to improve that. And I think this is I can't think of a better example than absenteeism and putting that in some sort of animated video to tell parents about the dangers of absenteeism.
It is something that attendance teams are working on, the communication, reaching out to students that are, at risk. It is also something that principals have shared at Meet the Teacher Night. It's definitely it's like a drum they keep beating, but we need to beat it louder. But it has been in Meet the Teacher Night slides. It talks, teachers are to talk about it in conferences, those kind of things. So, but yeah, I hear you. There's more creative ways and other ways we can work on that.
Can I I'm sorry, just on that, but do they talk about it when there are kids who aren't in the yellow zone, right? I mean, I think that maybe teachers are talking about it when kids are getting close.
Yes, but I think that when I said the principals, that in the Meet the Teacher was that's to everybody. But that's one time, right? And there's more times that can happen, absolutely. Okay.
We'll come back to me.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to share my takeaways from this. I think there's a lot of takeaways. But one, literacy. We really want to focus on literacy. I am happy that we are on it. We are in the process of implementing a new literacy curriculum at the elementary school, at O'Malley. We are working on an ELA pilot program to adopt a new curriculum and get some more interventions there. And throughout the night, you're going to hear me refer back to the plan for ongoing improvement. So what we're doing in literacy goes to priority number 2, that's strengthening instruction, the tier 1 instructions for all students. So that's one takeaway. The achievement gaps, so that's when I spoke about the growth percentile. I want to see more growth. I'd like to see students, us all grow and close some of those achievement gaps as well. Also part of priority number 2 of plan for ongoing improvement. The multi-tiered systems of support. We've heard RTI before, this is more global, but that to strengthen that at the elementary levels, we are implementing it at O'Malley. So that's a wonderful thing. We are kind of on the road there. And then of course, absenteeism is a huge thing and we need to work on that. We have our attendance teams that are local at each school working on that. We have a district-wide attendance team that's working on that. And that would go to priority number 1, that deepening the belonging and engagement for students. And this slide might not be necessary because we kind of asked questions along the way. But if you have any more, I'm happy to answer.
I remembered what I was gonna say. This is just an aside in relation to parent communication. So the emails that I get from Ben and from Talina all go to my updates folder in Gmail. They do not go to my primary mailbox. No matter
Yeah, me
how
too.
many times
Me
I've
too.
said, prioritize this, prioritize this, prioritize this, it gets buried. Emails get buried in my email in a different tab. I don't know why. But I'm just saying that because to Bill's point that like, I think we might still need to get more creative about how we're reaching out to
So
parents.
we
because
have
the emails-
updated our Gloucester Facebook page. Mike Gaffney has worked on that. And that might be a venue that we could really utilize to give some more communication on
And
attendance
then
policies.
Mike and I just sort of, now that Mike's sort of up to speed and, all the principals and, he and I work close together. There are steps, right? And one of the steps we were just talking about is how do we get into some of the different types of communication? Video, for example. And we got, is that a place for the superintendent, for principals, for others, you can use video. I think we got to develop our skills in terms of the animation in the video that Bill was talking about. I should learn more about that. Mike and I should learn more about that. So, and then also making sure that, that we're reinforcing the priorities, really, showing successes and then really helping people understand the direction we're going. And then there's and that's sort of like district-wide type of things. And then also, one of the really powerful tools we have is Kinvo. And primarily Kinvo is used, the real advantage of it is text, to text. And text, you probably heard at the conference, text are in many ways a much more effective approach in terms of communicating. They don't get as buried as emails, and you can link to website or websites, or remind them something's in the email. One thing that I've just heard anecdotally, some of our English learner families, is that a text to them through Kinvo, which is translated automatically, letting them know that an email has come from the principal. And that seems just anecdotally, just on a small level, seems to be a new approach that we're trying out and might have some real value. So I hear you definitely on the just trying more ways, and I think we have more of a team in place. And actually, probably one more person than most districts have, honestly. But that's so yeah, ways to go.
Any other question? I don't want to beat the absenteeism thing too much, but will we be at a point in this school year where we can say last year had all these requirements of people being out, and so therefore our absenteeism was X% or whatever, and now this year, September, October, November, and now it's December 1st, and we see it much lower because of the, you know what I mean? I just kind of want to.
So we already are at a point where we can kind of dive into some of that data. So Mike Muniz has developed this data tool that is tracking absenteeism by school and by the district. And according to the new attendance policy, instead of waiting for, and you all know this, you wrote the policy inside it, but this data, the data studio is showing us that we're not waiting for a student to have 5 absences. If they miss the first 2 out of 4 days, they're at 50% and they're already flagged to watch, right? And so we are watching that and we are meeting as attendance teams. Some schools, the larger schools, are meeting weekly, some are more bi-weekly because they have a smaller population or whatever the schools need. But we are watching that. I don't think we've gone back to compare to last year's data at this point. We might be able to do that. But we're watching it to try to intervene when students are getting flagged as possible going into their chronic tendencies. We are trying interventions, reaching out, working with families, offering support, whether it be school phobia, whether it be a medical condition, whether it be, I don't know, but discipline, or I don't know. But whatever the case is, we have the attendance team, and place to work with families to help them.
Let me just add to that, which is on the school committee presentation schedule, December 14th, we have a attendance report plan.
Okay.
So
There you go.
Amy goes into on that. But yeah, so that's when we'll give you a sort of update compared to last year, this year, how it's going, and it'll be good. But I mean, what Amy is saying, that's the work. The attendance teams looking at, each school level, across all schools, but we'll give an update on December 14th.
And related to that update, who knows where we'll be on December 14th, but just as I think parents especially are hearing a lot about flu and RSV and everything else. I don't know if Jeff Parko weighs in, because I'd be curious, if there's a flu, if tons of kids start to be out because of the flu, I'd love some input on if we know that, if we know that kids are being out because they're sick, kids are being out because they're at Disney World, it's different.
It is.
So I mean.
We don't always know that. In fact, we probably know some of that more this year than before, but it's never been tracked before. So we don't have any historical data on that. But I mean, and we may have some anecdotal data on that, but I know the nurses are tracking some of that. But it's very incomplete. But whatever we have, we can share.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I'm not done talking.
So we're gonna switch to
Moving on.
professional
Next agenda
development.
item.
What's that? Yeah, y'all can stretch and take a moment. But we're gonna switch to professional development. Now that you've heard where we are, here's where we're going, right? So this is the purpose of it coming up next. Reminding you of the plan. This is like a drum we're gonna beat all the time. Plan for ongoing improvement. We want to deepen students' belonging and engagement in school. That's the attendance, that's engagement strategies, that's all of those things. We want to strengthen instruction and better connection between general education and special education. That's that tier 1 instruction, that's working with MTSS. We want to strengthen student social emotional learning and mental health support. Lynn Lyons spoke to that and a lot of other initiatives. And priority 4 is to strengthen special education through improved coordination of service and specialized instruction. So just that's evaluation, goal writing, and those kind of things. So as we go through this, it's not animated, but I do have a little graphic.
So, dig on my animal.
No, it's just putting out, I need to find out how to animate it next time. But it will point out that what each is addressing. So the preschool is really focusing on priorities 1, 3, and 4. They're doing an IEP boot camp, and they're talking about the Brigance, report writing, IEP goal developing, classroom accommodations, and behavioral strategies. So that's the focus of professional development at the preschool level this year. Elementaries, this is just an introduction slide. We'll get to each one. So Wit and Wisdom implementation. We are year 1 of Wit and Wisdom implementation. Any teacher who piloted last year was able to implement this year, whether they piloted Wit and Wisdom or CKLA. In addition, any teacher that was of that grade level, because we wanted them to have peers to go next door and say, how did this lesson go? How can we better it? We wanted that collaboration. So say a 3rd grade teacher piloted Wit and Wisdom, their partner gets to also do it in that building. That's how we chose it. We also decided to have new teachers try it too, because it didn't make sense for them to learn Reading Street for a year and then come in for Wit and Wisdom. So that was our deciding factor. So they are piloting. They are working together as grade level teams. There are some PLCs throughout the districts that they work together. I know that there's a kindergarten Beeman Kindergarten and East Gloucester Kindergarten are really collaborating. That kind of was a homegrown. They really got along and go back and forth. So they're really supporting each other. That's great. We have our literacy leader team. I believe there's 15 literacy leaders. We have every grade level represented, every school represented. We meet monthly to talk about how we can support teachers in their buildings, teachers across the district in implementing Wit and Wisdom. Our literacy leaders stepped up and many of them led sessions yesterday, and we'll get to that when I talk about November 8th, so that's great. And then Foundations is currently K through 3 every school. We didn't half implement that. That's full in. And GEODS, which is the literature that goes along with it, is fully implemented in grades K through 2. FOSS training, we talked about that. FOSS is back. We are implemented in grades 2 through 5. And we have one first grade classroom that is trying it out as well. We're implementing it as well. And that is really, this is priority 1 and 2 because there's a lot of engagement. There's a lot of bringing students in, and it's strengthening that core curriculum. So, bringing 2 schools together, East Veterans School, there's a lot of professional development that has to go along with that. We have 2 communities that are coming together that have their own identities and their traditions, and to bring that together is very important and it has to be done skillfully. We also have 2 communities that had different teaching styles. So East Gloucester has traditionally been a platooning school. Grades 1 through 5 had 1 ELA teacher, 1 math teacher, and Veterans has traditionally been a co-teaching school. We're kind of bringing the best of both worlds together. When the 2 schools go into the new building next September, they will be a platooning school 1 through 5. Kindergarten will remain self-contained. But 1 through 5 will be platooning. They have already decided what subjects they're going to be teaching. And some grade levels at Veterans are trying out or platooning or being the pioneers of platooning in that school, and that's helping to bring the 2 schools together as well. Along with that, we are developing customizing some professional development to how can you co-teach within a platooning model, and you can. And so Mr. Fusco and I and Ms. Lambert are working with an outside consultant to kind of give, and Ms. Provost, to really make that come to life and support that. That's going to be a longer professional development. That's kind of a bigger lift, but that kind of professional development is going on now.
I just want to make sure I understand. So the platooning model is where the kids switch for everything?
Yeah, so there are 4 classrooms per grade level
At the new school.
at the new school. I don't know if it's going to be left or right, but for the purpose of this, we'll say left is ELA. There'll be 2 teachers that teach ELA. Mr. Fusco might correct me and it's opposite, but right, he'll forgive me, I hope.
You want to just use the example of East Gloucester right now?
Yeah, just use
East Gloucester.
Well, I wanted to do with the 4 schools.
I know, but-
4 grades. Okay.
I think, yeah, no, I think simple is good.
Okay, simple is good? Okay, so we have 2 grade levels, let's say 3rd grade at East Gloucester. Ms. Hood teaches math and science, and Ms. Reed teaches ELA and social studies. They each have a homeroom. The kids go to their homeroom, and approximately in the middle of the day, they switch. They stay with the same group of kids. They have 2 teachers, and it becomes a real team community.
So, and that's for every grade at East Gloucester?
1 through 5.
I'm a Beaman parent, so I'm
Yeah.
accustomed to a different, that changes grade
Platooning,
to grade.
platooning means a little different at Beaman because there are some grade levels with 3, right? Three classrooms, right?
And different grades do different things.
Right,
So it's gonna all be consistent
yes,
at the new school.
yes.
Interesting. Okay.
And with 4, it will be 2 and 2. So they'll only have 2 teachers. Right? They won't have 4.
Okay.
And that,
It would be like if we were teaching pairs, I would teach math and you would teach ELA. And if Kathy and Sam, she would teach math and you would teach ELA. So your student would see 2 teachers.
4 classes would see 2 teachers.
Yeah, each class. Does that make sense?
It's okay, I don't need
and
that.
the sliding wall actually in between.
That's gonna
It's
complicate
very
it more.
Interesting how that gets.
That is gonna add some more collaboration.
And then science will be somewhere.
Science is typically in the math classroom. Just math and science.
Okay.
Kathy? Keith has his hand.
Oh, Keith, sorry.
Hi, yeah, that's just a new concept to me too, of course, platooning. I've never even heard of such a
Keith,
concept.
can you speak up a little bit, please?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's just a new concept, platooning. So that's quite interesting. So is it what is the what am I trying to say is it to have specialized teachers rather than generalized teachers? Is that the
So the teachers are becoming more specialized because they focus in on one subject, yes. It also gives a more of a community. The students really thrive in it at East Gloucester. I've been there, it's been there longer than I've been. I was at East Gloucester. And it's a nice model to have some flexible learning and support students with different needs.
Yeah, so, and then part of that is, I mean, what we historically asked elementary school teachers to do is a whole lot.
Yes.
You know, all subject areas, especially as you get into the higher grade levels. You know, I taught a self-contained 5th and 6th grade classroom combined, all subjects. Didn't go very well. But just because we really ask a lot of them. And so in this way, the sort of a little bit specializing, there's a couple things. You can really develop more expertise in that area. You're not spreading yourself as an educator so thin. At the same time, we find that it also, as Andrew's saying, can really develop a community. You don't have just one teacher, but you have more than one. And that helps a lot of as well. So,
And social emotionally, if a kid has a tough day, they get a reset. They get to go next door and maybe the afternoon's better. We found it to be very productive for students and staff and
you see it done less at West Parish and Beaman, partly because there are 3 sections, there's 3 classrooms per grade. So that's just the math doesn't add up as easy.
Yeah.
different grades. Yeah.
Right,
it
so
can-
that's all right. It can happen certainly in lots of ways.
Yeah.
But it's not quite as natural today.
Just a quick follow-up. Seems like in West Parish, from my personal experience, there's some specialized instructors visit the classroom rather than the kids leaving the classroom, like a math instructor.
Yeah, I think those are more interventionists
Yeah.
than classroom teachers, yeah.
Yeah.
Or Title I teachers or those kind of, yeah.
Yeah, previous education, intervention is right. Yeah, a variety of folks who are pushing into classrooms, provide services or additional support or additional instruction. Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right, and at O'Malley, we have 4 topics I'm going to talk about. So they are talking about UDL, Universal Design for Learning. It's really about brain-based learning, and they focus on engagement, representation, so why we're learning something, what we're learning something, and then how. And it's really giving choice to students. Not everybody learns the same way. Not everyone can display their knowledge the same way. They're doing a lot of work with Katie Novak, who is an expert in the field. She's come to do staff meetings with them. We've done some online trainings with her. And they're finding ways to get to create their lessons with more engagement and action and kind of thought process, and shifting the load of learning to the students versus the teacher doing all the talking. We want the students just to kind of have some productive struggle and really think about the information they are learning and to digest it themselves. And so that's the goal of this. They also are working on literacy across the curriculum. Literacy does not just have to happen in your English or reading class. There's literacy that can be done in science and social studies and so forth. So they are working on having common language throughout the school. So if they're taking notes in science one way, when they go to social studies, they don't need to necessarily do it another way. They collaborate so that they're having the same literacy goals across the curriculum. And then, of course, the pilot at O'Malley, they are piloting 3 curriculum, which is a lot in 1 year. They are wrapping up Wit and Wisdom this week and moving on to Amplify ELA is the next one. And then after the new year, they'll be using StudySync. Something amazing about this pilot, the teachers are being really thoughtful and into the curriculum, but there's some student surveys, they're getting student feedback on their experience with the curriculum, which is a lovely addition to kind of get their viewpoint of what's happening. So once the curriculum is selected, which we will hope will be done on or around February vacation, we will be implementing one of these 3.
Are all teachers piloting? Or is it?
So there are 9 teachers, and there's one that is leading, so she's doing some of the lessons, but 8 of the 9, yes.
So I'm just sort of thinking, we talked about the golden thread between every single school, right? Grade level. And I'm looking at these different pilots, so like, we've decided that Wit and Wisdom is gonna be at the elementary school level. Do the other two, Amplify and Study Sync, will those be sort of a nice
That's
transition?
what we're gonna look for.
Okay,
So a quick read is Wit and Wisdom Elementary, Wit and Wisdom Middle School, right? It's not that simple.
right, of course.
The curriculums are designed for different levels, so slightly differently. The needs are different at each level. Wit and Wisdom might be the curriculum for middle school, it might not be. But we do want to be thoughtful of that it transitions nice from one to the other. And that's something we absolutely can do with any of these programs. We want to make sure we meet the needs of O'Malley, and we want to make sure that it's able to be implemented properly, right? So it might be the right curriculum, it might not be. There, you know, at the middle school, they have blocks, the timing is different. Wisdom's a longer, 90-minute block versus a 60 minutes. That's hard to do, 90 minutes and 60 minutes. It might not be the right fit, but we're not ready to decide that yet. It is part of the puzzle, and we're looking at it. But we do want to be thoughtful about the transition from elementary to middle. We also want to be thoughtful about the transition from middle to high school. So for example, if one of these curriculum teaches a novel that is currently taught at the high school, and it's the one that we adopt, we're going to want to then work with the high school and say, hey, we need to figure this out, right? But we're not at a point to make that decision yet, to make those changes, because we've only piloted one so far. We've got 2 to go, and I look forward to telling you how it goes in the spring. Okay. So last year they did the ELA really deep dive on what the curriculum was and how it was working, and now they're piloting. We are now doing that deep dive with math at O'Malley. So we've started a committee. We're going to be meeting shortly to start looking at big ideas, which is their current curriculum, and see if it's meeting the needs of the students there. If it's something that we need to investigate to possibly pilot something new. We are collaborating with the state for the MTSS program, and they're supporting us at bringing some more interventions into O'Malley. They started some last year, and we're going to just strengthen that program. So that is also some curriculum development that we're working on this year. We're about a year behind the rate of the ELA. So,
I can't quite remember if we have someone in the role in that curriculum role.
Yep, Kate Robertson.
Okay.
She started this year. She is the curriculum coach for both math and ELA, and she's fabulous.
Yes. I don't think we
Nope, we're going to have her come into at some point.
She's
I love
actually
that. She
Yeah.
is a panelist if you want her to say hello. I didn't tell her I was going to put her on the spot.
Well, just put her on the spot.
Don't put her on the spot.
I wasn't planning on putting her on the
Don't
spot.
put her on the But we would love to meet her when she is prepared to meet us.
Lynn is coming to present the sustainable improvement plan update, and also December 14th.
Yeah.
I imagine if I ask nicely, that Karen will come along.
I'm sure she will. She has quickly gotten to know the staff at O'Malley. She has quickly earned their trust, I think. I meet with her and Lynn regularly, and she's really a wonderful addition.
I'm just so glad to hear someone's about.
Yeah, great. Yeah, someone's in that role, and we're going to get her connected with the elementary coaches as well. She's been in touch with 1 or 2 of them, but just strengthen that bond as well. Yeah, we're all positive.
Good, love that.
All right,
Skip this one?
what?
Or skip this one?
Want me to see this one?
Well, I'm just thinking that we did it, and
You did it, right?
Yeah, you stole my thunder.
I get used to it.
But I had some thank yous to give with it. Can I give those?
Yes, please give thank you.
Okay. So Superintendent Lummis stole my thunder on this. I didn't know he was going to give such detail of yesterday, but it was fabulous. But I do want to give a little some thank yous. I want to start out by thanking all of the instructors, many instructors who led sessions. We had over 70 sessions. Amy Cam and Katie Provost organized some outside providers. Amy Cam was the one who got Lynn Lyons to come here. Katie Provo got a lot of some special ed providers to come in and help. But more fabulous is I want to just highlight our staff, teachers, paras, administrators, all led sessions. They taught, they got themselves out there. They were amazing. Who doesn't want to learn from their peers? and the courageousness that they had of going out there and doing it. I really am so impressed, and I really want to thank everyone who stepped up to do that. Most of the sessions were led by our own staff, which is awesome. I want to thank the coaches who were critical in the planning and out just getting the whole day run smoothly. They helped with the food, for the snacks in the morning. They were directing people where to go, where their sessions were. They were helping people with sign-up pages. They had literally a help desk set up. I want to thank Brittany Holmes, who works at the district office, working with all of the teachers to make sure they get PDPs and credit for all the courses they take. She also helped me lead a session. She was fabulous. She actually really led it, not me. I want to thank all of IT. Alex Mason was running around O'Malley, getting adapters and fixing things, and Ethan, they were fabulous. I want to thank IT for everything they did. The custodians, food service provided coffee throughout the day and tea. The nursing staff put on a flu and vaccine clinic for all staff on site. Mike Gaffney came and documented the day, so you got to see that. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Matt Fusco's band at the end of the day that brought us all together. Also happening yesterday at the high school, James Cook and his team were amazing. He had 20 people volunteer to share one of their lessons to get feedback from their peers. How courageous is that? Amazing work that they've done. And especially, and I'm gonna miss him, Greg Bach. It was his day. He did all of it and he was amazing. And I don't know, next year I think I might just put on a video and say that's what I did on the I'll try to live up to it. But he did awesome. I got an email immediately after. I won't say it's from, but it's from a staff member. Just wanted to say that today was amazing. It was a great way to recharge. All of the workshops were valuable and inspiring. The rock band at the end just absolutely made my day. Well done for all of the presenters and to me and Greg for putting it together. Awesome. So
That's great.
you didn't take that one.
No. I can tell you that.
All right.
No, and also just to reiterate, I mean, this really has been Greg's work for the last number of years. Obviously one part of his work, but a big piece. I mean, it takes so much to organize people and cajole them, and convince them, but also support them. He does so well organize it. It's smooth and seamless, and he's really the orchestrator of that and has been. So, but as Amy says, just a huge team effort.
Yeah, and after a pandemic and feeling so heavy, people were skipping out of there, happy and inspired and recharged.
That's great.
Yeah. Okay, special education professional development, that goes to priority 1 as far as engagement strategies, but also priority 4 is mostly or all special ed. We're streamlining the evaluation process, the goal writing, de-escalation strategies. We are working with communication devices, the autism curriculum. And then we also have some social emotional training that goes to priority number 3 and 1 with belonging. Superintendent Lummis talked a lot about Lynn Lyons. She's amazing. We're implementing the Trails curriculum, Project Adventure for 3 levels with some SEL support at the middle school. We are attending a comprehensive threat assessment training, which is not as uplifting, but we still need to do it. And then we are in partnership with the youth for some SEL online trainings as well. And then I got to the end.
Anybody have any additional questions?
Every time you guys present on correctional development, I'm just so jealous because I want to go and
Yes, we learn really good.
learn all of the things, the lists every year. I'm just like,
Go play bass.
Yes.
I don't want to be Debbie Downers.
We don't have to be there.
My daughter sometimes call me, but do you think that one of the things that they talked about at the conference was, teacher burnout, people leaving the profession. And this sounded wonderful. I actually talked to some teachers today, confirmed everything you just said. great professional development day. Is there a way to, I mean, so good that I'm thinking, well, do we need more of that type of stuff, and can it fit into the school year? And I mean, I think back to what's manufacturing. I ran a place where like I had probably 80 people under me, and I knew that if those 80 people came to work, like I'm feeling very good about, you know, stressed or burnt out, that my day was going to be a nightmare, and I was basically going to put out fires for the entire day. So I always kind of get back to that, is all the stuff about, you know, professional development is good. It's going to be better if the people that are administering that or delivering that are really feeling good about participating and being employed by the Gloucester Public Schools. So I kind of just get to that as, hey, what can we do to enhance that or to grow that out in some form or fashion without, you know, understanding that there's a whole, that's a big question.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Phil, I appreciate you raising it. It's probably the single most important question that we face in public schools right now. You know, teaching has always been an incredibly difficult job. It literally takes all of you, takes all of your being to be a great teacher every day. You know, it takes your intelligence, it takes your humor, it takes your experience and wisdom, it takes your humility, it takes it takes everything, right? And these days it's more exhausting than ever for any number of reasons, for a whole host of reasons.
Right.
And so, you know, where we, and the we is pretty collective, because it can't be just administrators doing things, you know, because that doesn't work. As Amy said, one of the most powerful pieces about yesterday was that a lot of staff led these things, and a whole range of staff led these sessions, you know. But folks have got to have a sense that they can be successful. I think they've got to have a sense that it's clear what's expected of them, you know. They got to know that people care about them and they care about each other. They have a little connection to each other. You know, and then they also, another piece on this is folks don't typically mind learning if it's relevant to what they're doing. You know, one of the reasons I left teaching a long time ago was because the professional development I was getting had absolutely nothing to do with what was important to me. I was tired of being treated that way, very honestly, you know. So yesterday I think is a good example on a number of levels of the types of things we can do, and can do more of. Because the learning is really relevant to the classroom. It's really relevant to the challenges folks face on behavior or anxiety. It's really relevant to connecting, you know. The backyard growers, the rock band, there's also the knitting, and just things where like, people have time, they connect during the little important learning stuff, but they also connect in other pieces as well, and that's crucial. So I'm not trying to say we're doing all things right, but these are the types of things that really matter, and doing them well like that, and doing them with, you know, in collaboration with, you know, teachers and educators and school secretaries and IT folks, as opposed to doing it to folks, matters a ton. And I think that's one of the things, you know, one of the legacies of Greg Bach that we all need to remember is the way that he has helped us develop a process for creating yesterday, you know, or our half days, but also how we consider and adopt curriculum. It always involves teachers in a really significant way. You know, it's always relevant to folks. It's always listening to folks. You know? And I think, you know, that's sort of sauce, the special sauce that is crucial to helping to feed people, helping to keep them engaged, helping them know that they're being effective. But that ongoing listening, work, and collaboration is to continue it. So it's incredibly hard question, honestly. But you know, I do think that we have half days as well. We have more half days than a lot of folks, and I think those, you know, need to continue to be, you know, help. And I think we did a pretty good balance. We didn't hit it perfectly at all during the pandemic, where we backed off on things. You know, it had some half days where people just, you know, did what they need to do. You know, so I think being in tune with that makes a lot of sense. But we do have to be conscious always, even in normal times, that we're not, you know, overloading folks. And that's why we talk about just uncivil wisdom over the course of years, you know. That's why our Trails curriculum in terms of social emotional learning is really being led by our adjustment counselors as opposed to classroom staff. So we're trying to be thoughtful about that. We won't get it right every time, but we need to make sure our ears and eyes are open so we can adjust. I hope that's not just a lot of talk, but it's something that I think our principals, our administrators, our teachers, our union leadership really think a lot about. I think they're very concerned about.
So, no, and I appreciate that. It's become crystal clear to me. You don't have to be, I'm certainly not the smartest guy in the world, but understanding that the teachers are the foundation of delivering what we do. And if they're not in a good place, then it doesn't. The foundation is kind of, there's some problems.
Yeah. I mean, another small example of this is, another part of the foundation is our school secretaries. And we've done very little. This isn't just Gloucester. Historically, districts don't do much support and professional development with them. And so yesterday we had a session led by Cody Marshall for school secretaries on Munis. One of the key pieces of their operations every day that has changed recently. But in order for them to feel like they can do the jobs well, they really need some learning. So we provided that. But then also, and then the next step on that was had a great meeting with Kathy Hurd, the principal's secretary here, and about just ongoing, on upcoming half days. What else can we support them with? And so that's another place. Listening to folks, learning what they need to help them do the jobs better, and making sure they get some of that. So that's another place. I think that's another example of how listening to folks and then supporting in ways that they need is part of connection to and feel like we're successful.
I appreciate the answer.
I'll just follow up by saying, I've done this for a while. Professional development now looks very different than it did when I first got on. Much more, everybody heard and discussed this idea of what's relevant and what's helpful. And so it really has evolved to a very productive, exciting kind of way we approach it, and way kind of a menu item of some teachers can sign up for things. So it really is a more collaborative way, but also I think the quality and the relevance of everything that's being delivered, the peer, the outside speakers, it really has reached the place. Again, it's great.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the other week, or I'm not sure which meeting was, but pretty recent, at the end, and he said, I didn't really say anything.
What's that?
A couple meetings ago, or maybe last meeting, he said, I didn't really say anything on meeting. I'm like, that'll change.
So now, then you made me talk the entire time.
So thank you very much, Amy. That was very, I appreciate the work on that. So my goals? All right, so you all have copies of these. Can you just send this down to Sam? I don't think Sam has to.
I just get a copy.
Oh, that's right. There you go.
Okay.
I give you two? Share my screen.
To my color.
Let's show a couple of things and then we can go more in depth. So, talking about the plan for ongoing improvement, again, linking my goals to the plan for ongoing improvement. So priorities again, deepen student belonging and engagement in school, priority 1. Strengthen instruction and better connect general and special education, priority 2. Priority 3, strengthen student social emotional learning and mental health support. And priority 4, strengthen special education to improve coordination of services and specialized instruction. All of that done well over a number of years leads to deeper student learning, improved academic achievement, and our GHS graduates prepared for the next step after graduation. Okay, we keep hearing about this. tonight very purposefully. In the budget process, you'll hear about this as well. The plan for ongoing improvement. My goals, as you know, as you've seen, are tied directly to the plan for ongoing improvement. The goals that the principals and I are working on, their goals are tied very directly to the plan for ongoing improvement. And the school improvement plans will be tied to the plan for ongoing improvement, okay? Just as yesterday's professional development had those strong links as well. So this is what you see in terms of my my draft summary. I'm going to zoom in here in a moment. Let me just show. So goal 1 is different than the goals 2 through 5, sorry, mirror exactly the plan for ongoing improvement. The first one though is leading for the long term. And that's really one of my main responsibilities. How do I lead in a way that helps keep us focused on, helps us keep doing day-to-day work well, but really also take a longer term focus in terms of how do we build our progress. That's progress in student belonging, progress in student learning, and progress in student academic achievement over the long term. So I'll go to that in a little bit. Goal 2, again, aligned with the plan for ongoing improvement, deepen student belonging and family engagement. So this is the work that I'll be doing with our leaders and making sure they're making clear identifiable actions on increasing family engagement and or student engagement, the student voice, student choice leadership at our schools. Goal 3, strength instruction. So, you know, strength instruction and deepening student learning and academic achievement is always, you know, the most important work here. But there are many pieces that go into that. And that's why we always start with student belonging, right? Because without students feeling connected and understood and welcomed and loved in their schools, they can't learn, or it impedes learning. So, but anyway, goal 3 about strength instruction. And again, this is the work that I will do and doing in coordination with many others on leading instructional improvement across all of our schools and making sure that we're collaborating in a way that makes sure that students, you know, a larger number of students are receiving engaging, high quality instruction. They're getting supportive interventions and enrichment every day. That again results in measurable student improvement and student learning and academic achievement. And then goal 4, again, aligned with the plan for ongoing improvement, student emotional learning and mental health support. So the work that I will do, I'll get into specifics on all of these in a moment, on supporting overall well-being of our students by assessing, analyzing school culture, and then making adjustments based on what we learned from those assessments. We've been doing a number of surveys for quite some time on student culture and student belonging, but haven't quite had the systems or structures in place to respond to that and really analyze it deeply, teams, that sort of thing. So that's something that we're working on. And then goal 5, just the work that I will do supporting Katie Provo and our school leaders in making sure that we are growing and developing and making sure our systems for evaluation, analysis, IEP development are stronger than they have been in the past. So a couple of things about this. I've talked about how it's tied to the plan for ongoing improvement. On the bottom, you'll see at this point, DESE standards. Those are the superintendent evaluation standards and how each one links to certain standards. As we go further along in the year and get more in my evaluation process, I'll identify specific indicators that the different goals support within those standards. And then, because the intention is that when I'm giving you evidence of progress of each of these goals, that you'll have enough information to make assessment across the entire rubric, which, as you folks know from prior years, is lengthy.
Yes.
So I won't go into, you read this, you see this. The point tonight is to have you ask questions, have you clarified things, and also give me feedback on it, things that you see too much of or don't see enough of, that sort of thing. So I won't go through, but just to give you and others who are watching, so the basics. So leading for the long term, this is about finalizing and really beginning to operationalize the 3-year plan for ongoing improvement. It's all the work we're doing in East Veterans School, and continue to bring veterans in East Gloucester together. That's everything from That's the sort of the people work. Okay, we're getting to the facilities and capital planning work here as well. There's also the building work around these veterans. Living for the long term is also about facilities and capital planning. How do we make sure that we have the long-term viability of our school facilities, and then also operations, specifically operations that I'm going to really support this year as our human resources department. One of the things, Bill, another part of the answer to your question is, our outreach, recruitment, hiring, and onboarding. Those all feed into retention. And certainly it's a more competitive environment these days for getting school staff. And so we really have to start shifting and improving our all levels of that, particularly outreach, recruitment, hiring. Safety, security, always new developments on that. And one of the things that Amy mentioned earlier was our CSTAG training, as well as there's also cyber threats as well that we're doing. So you'll get more information about that. Is it helpful if I stop after each one and pause and ask for questions or clarifications?
Okay.
Thanks. In relation to the recruitment, I'm just curious what your thoughts are, what the committee's thoughts are on specifically stating sort of a goal around diversity in recruitment and hiring.
A couple things are really important about our staff and our staff reflecting our students. Race, language. I think so those are two important pieces that to me, but also I think to our students or stuff. Another piece, which is interesting, which we'll never talk about, is I haven't actually ever discussed this, but I just thought of it, is that you're reflecting your students. All our students are from Gloucester. One of the ways you reflect your students is if you have people from here, from the community. And people don't actually talk about that as a important piece of hiring or staff, but I would like to say that's actually in many ways a really powerful piece. I think that's one of the reasons that we really think about during the pandemic, because so many folks, were born, live here, and tied to here. Anyway, that's sort of aside. So the area for me that's the highest priority there in terms of diversity hiring is language. That doesn't mean that other areas are important, race, cultural, also just diversity of staff in terms of people coming from different places, different areas. But the thing we've been really focusing on is folks who speak multiple languages. And we've done actually quite a good job of that recently. And we can share data later in the year, and that'll be part of probably my evidence. But we have a number more bilingual staff now. And even just this year alone, I think we probably hired at least three or more. And that's tied to the fact that our community, but also our schools, is growing in terms of Spanish and Portuguese. That's an area for us that's really important. Another piece of that is pipeline. It's challenging to have folks move from other places to any new school system, okay, that reflect the population of the schools that live there. It's not a hard thing to do. But you can build from within, and certainly there are a lot of families here who speak multiple languages that we could access, and we have multiple, entry ways into employment in Gloucester schools. There's obviously teaching, there's paraprofessionals, there's bus drivers, there's secretaries, there's food service, there's new supervisors. So there's a whole gamut of ways that we can tap into folks who live in the community, whether they have degrees or not. That could be part of our efforts on hiring multilingual staff. So that helps.
It does. Thank you.
Any other questions or clarifications or suggestions in this area? Okay, great. Just moving on, deep in student belonging and family engagement. So at O'Malley and Gloucester High, really important. They're making real important steps. You've heard some about them tonight, and making sure students have more sense of belonging, more leadership, more choice, and more voice at both the middle and high school levels. Everything from being involved in creating the dance to being involved in running the community meetings at O'Malley. Those are just two examples. But supporting folks to make sure we get those done. That's a really high priority for both those schools. And then Another area is making sure that Gloucester High makes, in my support of both the principal and our director of school counseling and operations, and also Career Voc Tech, make sure that we're taking the initial steps to really work with students from the time they're in 8th grade all the way through high school, that they're sort of identifying what their pathway is leading after high school, what their next step is. And that's a guidance effort, that's an instructional effort, that's a communication messaging effort, but that's an area in terms of belonging that is really important, that I've really set as a high priority for my work. Increasing family engagement in the school community, so that's everything from working with our elementary school and pre-K school leaders, and also parent leaders. So a parent leader meeting this morning, and last month it was all about really focused on ongoing efforts on family engagement, and specifically building engagement of families who typically do not participate in school events or school activities, sort of thing. So working with our elementary school leaders as well as our parent leaders. And another area of that is continue to work with families and learn from families who are opting out. So we'll be launching, as I think I mentioned, a survey for folks who moved from our 8th grade and didn't continue into 9th grade at high school, and learning from them about why, and what is it about the Gloucester schools that you like or don't like, or saw or didn't see that fit for your child or children. And so that's another area we're reaching out to learn from families, both in our district, but also those who've opted out of our schools, about what they perceive as the strengths and what areas that need improvement. So, and then the other piece is just supporting our efforts on reducing chronic absenteeism. I want you folks to hold me accountable that we make progress in that area, not only in our actions and our teams, but also the results. And then, as we talked about earlier, just communication outreach, ongoing work on that.
So all this sounds great. I just want to put in a plug, because I think I have 4. Just that our community continues to become more and more diverse in ways that are apparent and not apparent. At my bus stop alone, right? I have a family from Nepal, I have a family from Guatemala, I have, so there's a lot of people here. And so I just want to, I know that the different buildings are doing this, but just sort of for all these cultures to be seen, for all these children to feel, because belonging means that the child from, Southeast Asia is also being met, even though there may only be 1 or 2, so I just, I see the ways in which for every single child, especially in a culture that has such a dominant culture, like this community has a dominant culture and then lots of smaller cultures or different cultures. So I just want to put in a plug that we really work to see all of the cultures here.
Really, really important. We talked just with some of the parent leaders this morning just about this notion of diversity, access, inclusion, and belonging. And I just share sort of a framework or really an analogy that, in one level, this is simplistic, but I think it makes the point is, diversity is that everyone's invited to the party, and they understand the invitation. Okay? They actually get it, they understand it, they know what's happening. Right? So if I have this here, equity is that everyone can attend, because we've reduced barriers, typical barriers. If you're talking about a school event or that sort of thing, it might be childcare, it might be transportation, it might be a timing, that sort of thing. Inclusion is that folks are there and then they know they're welcome and they know that people are glad that they're there, part of it. Okay? And then belonging is that all sorts of folks are actually involved in creating. Because when you have a wide variety of folks creating things, whether that be how parent conferences or a good example is the O'Malley dance. Because the PTO was so involved in that, it actually changed how that was done and made it much better. So when you have more folks actually creating the event or the party or that sort of thing, a more diverse range of folks makes it a better experience, better place. So that's just one framework, one concept, one approach, but it helps sort of like put some concrete pieces to, what do those big goals mean? And that's one way we can help our schools and also our parent leaders to sort of think about that. But because when you go in and you know you're welcome, if you're happy to see you, it's a whole different experience. Otherwise, it's a whole different experience. Everything comes from that.
So I have a question on measurable. How do we measure? Some things seem, there's a lot of obviously very good work, and some things can probably have some data that says we have this and now we have that. I'm sure a lot of it doesn't. So I guess that's kind of fleshed through the plan for ongoing improvement. I think those measurable pieces should be incorporated where we can.
Yeah, and that's
And
why.
knowing that goals are not necessarily, I know in the past we've had goals that in year one, we were hoping to kind of lay the groundwork. In year two, we were hoping to do this. In year three, so it's not necessarily what is this year's measurable, but when is it going to tell us, whether that's year 2 or 3, that we kind of made progress and gotten to a certain place.
And how are you measuring it?
Right.
Like just even that, right? Yeah, so we're both at the leadership team, district leadership team, but also the smaller teams. So Katie Provo is leading the team. That's part of operationalizing the plan for ongoing improvement is identifying the timelines we have, but the measurables and what the outcomes and what the specific measurable goals are and how we're going to measure. So you'll see that as the year goes along, that fleshed out, and that's the same sort of evidence that can be used here as well. The plan isn't done. I mean, what we're going to do is identify, but how we're going to measure it isn't yet. It's ongoing work.
It's funny that you brought that up, Kathy, and I appreciate it, because I only put a check mark next to one thing, and that's back to goal 1. I put a check mark next to identify deliverables, timelines, and measurements of progress for components. And since I've been on the school committee, I've become more of a data person. I've never been that way my entire life. I've always been big picture. As long as I see some progress, I'm fine. But that certainly is important. And what does that look like? But I think you've also explained that.
No, but that's exactly right. That's the work that hasn't been done, hasn't been completed yet. But that's exactly speaks to what Kathy was asking.
Exactly.
That bullet you see. Absolutely.
And the other thing that just to revert back to the conference for a minute, there was a gentleman that was the director of inclusion in the Cambridge Public Schools. That was his job. I thought, boy, here I am as a 60-year-old guy that hasn't had to face any of that type of stuff my entire life. I was like, well, that's kind of a weird subject. By the time he was done speaking, I was like, yeah, boy, I got a lot to learn on that particular end of the spectrum. And what can I do in my own self-examination to say, do I do a good job of making people feel that are different than I am, making them feel included and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a community effort. I don't think that's just, hey, the superintendent said that, let's roll that out. I think it's a process for people, and I think it's something you got to kind of work through yourself to get to that point where we're all more of that bent than maybe we were previously. So if that makes any sense.
No, it makes a ton of sense. Both things. One, in terms of just learning yourself, learning ourselves, right? So Amy and I are participating in a MASS sponsored program, which is on race, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And the reason that the two of us are doing is for us to learn more about it and about ourselves and about our own biases and our own approaches, but also learn some skills, and then to figure out, what pieces of that fit with the work we're doing. I will say this, that some of the latest thinking around issues of race, equity, diversity, inclusion is a lot about belonging. Belonging, how do you support a wide variety of, all students? How do you support them not only in academics, but also in mental health, and social emotional learning? I think what I'm pretty proud about is that some of the most important pieces of that work are embedded very clearly in our plan for ongoing improvement. And I think the other piece you mentioned is, how do we all, our teachers, our school leaders, myself, school leaders, ask that question of, especially classroom folks, classroom teachers, right? What am I doing, and what more can I do? Make sure every student in here knows I care about them, knows I believe in them, and that I'm taking them for who they are, not who I think they should be. But that seems obvious and natural and normal, but human beings don't. It's hard for them to operate that way. But that's an important question, though. Is how do we ask that more of ourselves? Absolutely.
I just want to add sort of this nuance to belonging of truly trying to understand people, right? And so, and I say that because in the work that I do, I'm often sort of faced with like not quite understanding maybe something specific about a certain population, but I still am required to provide them with support, right? And so I can't ask that person to explain to me what I don't know. I need to seek that information out myself, right? So like that would require me, and I'm using just myself as an example, but as like a district as a whole, right? Like so the teacher doesn't quite understand something about a specific population or identity, to really seek out that information and ask for support. And that I think is just step one in helping to help somebody feel true belonging and understood. And it just takes some humility on our part to be like, I don't know really how to support you, and I need to learn more, but I'm not going to put that burden on you to teach me. I need to do the work. And so I think that that's, to me, just like the most important piece of this is like recognizing that like there's so much that we don't know. That's okay. You just need to do the work to figure that out.
That's not easy work. That sort of learning is not easy. We definitely have to take our kids where they are and really try to understand who they are, where they're coming from, and different backgrounds, that sort of stuff. Because they need to know that no matter who they are, they really care about them. You need to know that every single day, for every single adult in our buildings. Because then they can learn. And some kids don't need that. They just like I can walk in a place and assume that. I had that privilege. Not every child does. So we have to make sure that they know that from us every single day. Goal 3. So this is about, and this is the most important stuff. That's what everything leads to. So as I've said before, strength instructional leadership. So again, that's how the work I'm doing with our school district leaders. And that's through the goal setting with them. That's through the work we do at our leadership team meetings. That's through the work I do with regular school visits. And then also making sure that I'm supporting the work and we're putting in place the work around ongoing curriculum review, which you've heard a lot about today. That's across all levels, obviously. Continuing the work we've been doing with elementary schools, deepening the work we've been doing at GHS, and really launching the work in a real way at O'Malley. Strength inclusive practices. So this is just some beginning steps on that. On the strength, that's just putting in place a leadership team that will look at inclusive practice and figure out what inclusive practices are for Gloucester. Okay, and really defining that. That goes to the notion of clarity and what's expected of folks. And then just this sort of goes into some of the questions in terms of continuing to deepen our school district support for English learners. That's continued to prioritize and hire bilingual staff. Talk about that. Translation support, we've added more this year, and we'll document that for you. And then the other piece on this, and will be a 3-year process, is just like we've done curriculum work and instructional work in ELA and math at O'Malley, and ELA and math in middle school, and a whole bunch of stuff at high school. We're going to be doing the same over the next 3 years for English learner education. That begins this year with tiered focus monitoring process from Department of Education. And so supporting that our team is doing that and make sure we get that done. And then we'll go into, in the upcoming years, addressing our curriculum instruction method. Especially for newcomers, that's the area that we need probably just more support for our teachers, classroom teachers and EL teachers, when a student walks in from Nepal or Bolivia or Spain, and they speak no English, how do you begin with them? That's a really difficult moment for a teacher, unless they have some real strategies and skills, and we have some good support and curriculum for them. That's an area we will work on, beginning that process to get better. And then student social emotional learning and mental health support. This is really about, from my standpoint, supporting some specific areas, something you've already heard about, but it's making sure from my standpoint that some things are happening. So that I mentioned earlier that we do surveys, we do analyze, we do assess how students are doing in a variety of ways, but how are we using that to impact school culture and student belonging and improve that? How we're making sure that we have systemic mechanisms for identifying students who are in need and maybe require additional targeted support. We do that very well in terms of the academic learning, and our support and launching last year, piloting this year a little bit more, with Amy Cam's leadership, and then how to assess students for those needs and how do we get them support. Part of that is this last piece, which is continue building partnerships with community agencies. So we're not doing all of that, but we can help. We're better suited to connect those students or families who are in need with agencies that can really provide them support that happens outside the school. In some ways, this goal is support Amy Cam and her great team across schools, and stay out of their way to some degree, but also really make sure that that they know that it's important we get these things done and we make progress on them. That's a big piece of this. And in some ways, the last goal 5.
Can I ask a
sorry.
question on that?
Yeah.
So you talk about existing surveys.
Yes.
Would it be possible for you to just send us, just share an example of
Oh yeah. Yeah.
surveys you're talking
Yeah. A couple things. So we do a variety of them. O'Malley for the last number of years has been doing a survey 3 times a year. I don't want to say vocals really the MCAS, right?
Those are MCAS,
Yeah.
But they do a student survey too.
Right, so and on top of that, they do the vocal survey, which is tied to MCAS. It's sort of at the end of MCAS. We do YRBS every 2 years, and at our next school committee meeting, you'll see a bunch about that. So that's another piece. So yes, but we can share that. But yeah, we'll share the YRBS questions with you next time, many of them, and then the other surveys we'll share in time as well.
Yeah, because just thinking about so many of us have kids, or like this is my first year without a child at school, so it's just really just useful, I think, to understand what other families at different levels of the district are, how we're engaging with them.
Yeah.
And just share it via email to them.
I think that's another piece about it is not only have the school work with the data, but make it public so we know and we can then see progress over time. The last piece is just sort of the blocking and tackling of how do we really improve and strengthen our special education processes. So, and you've heard this, evaluation, eligibility processes, strengthening our IEP development. And then the last piece is more instructional part, and that's really sort of my efforts while we're working across a number of areas where I'm focusing my support is in the work that Katie Provo and principals are leading, and special education staff are leading on autism and development delay programs and supporting those and strengthening those. You see we're sort of focusing on pre-K to 2 and 9 to 12 on that, and then support school district efforts to strengthen our therapeutic programs, specifically at Beaman and O'Malley. So that's work they're doing already. It's up to me to support it and make sure that we make progress in those areas. And that's a fair bit of that is clarifying expectations, clarifying instructional strategies, and then supporting the folks in taking those on. So again, another way of describing this is make sure I'm supporting Katie Provo and her team and doing some really important work that will help us on a number of levels with this education. So it's a lot of stuff we're already doing. It's not new stuff. And it's a question of whether I can support and our folks in making sure that they can get these things done across. We have a really good team. the most important piece is that, no small group is doing way too much. So I think it's across lots of roles.
So I have a general approach to what you put forth. Speaking of somebody, I realize this is all part of the important work that you do and that we are doing with the whole school district. And I wonder, has your mentor looked at your goals to say maybe you should be, it shouldn't have everything in your goals, knowing, we know the work will be happening, but I think the more specific or key things that I think we can evaluate on might be, is this too ambitious for us to, goals should be achievable, right? And if you've got 20 really high priority things in here, I don't want anybody to say, you only did 15. When 15, any 15 would be hugely important, right? So I just want you to think about that and think about how other superintendent goals, is this articulating a really ambitious picture, even though we know the district ongoing plan for ongoing improvement is very ambitious. Does that all have to be on your goals? So that's.
Yeah, so to answer your first question, for the first time, no. My colleague and coach has not really looked at these. So I think it's a good step for us also. I appreciate that. And if she has some suggestions, she will make sure I hear them very clearly. So that's helpful, yeah. Because no, it's definitely ambitious. I get that clearly. The challenge here is, as you folks know, it's not all my work. It's from my role. How do I help make sure it happens? But there might be just too much of those things.
So today we have something to say.
I was sort of going to piggyback on what you just said and what Ben sort of just recognizes. It's a lot of ground to cover. And as you just said, it's not all you. You've got a team, you've given a lot of credit where credit's due. But I have to agree with the chair that maybe it is a bit too much, because you're right, because I could just see some folks in the post say, you only got 15 out of 20. What a schmuck. So I'd be interested in what your mentor has to say too. It's something to be refined a bit.
So this is our first preview of the draft. And so that would be my feedback to you. Obviously everything will have a huge impact on students and families, but you think about that before we talk about it again.
If I make adjustments, I'll make sure what they are. Make sure you guys are clear.
And just because they come off doesn't mean they're not being done. I guess is my point.
So I'm one principal, and that person was saying, because we have something similar with them, not as extensive as this, but very aligned. And that principal was really saying that how much they appreciated having real clarity on them. Like, this is the thing they got to pay attention to. So there's your point is very well taken, and it's the right point to make. And in some ways, it's kind of nice to know, we got to keep moving on these things. So, but I think it's a lot. So I agree.
There's a lot for us to evaluate you on.
True.
As well. So there might be a practical aspect of this as well.
Trying to throw us off the trail. He's throwing a lot out there.
No, not at all. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So we will move on. Their subcommittee reports is next, and there have not been any subcommittee meetings since our last meeting. Under action, we have a couple exciting grants, at least one of them. Approval of the grants, and I move that we accept the Braceco Foundation grant for the O'Malley Science Center in the amount of $200,000.
Second.
And I move that so they're all about particular great generosity and program support.
This grant is an amazing way to bring all of the fabulous things that are happening at the O'Malley Science Center and bring it out to third grade through 8th grade. We talked about bringing back FOSS, and we talked about not really having enough time to do FOSS the right way in all of our classrooms, right? So this is an effort to kind of help with that. So this grant has 5 goals. To extend the quality of professional development in science in grades 3 through 8. And what that means is by hiring a science coordinator for 3 through 8, classroom teachers could go after school, say on a whatever Thursday, 3rd grade is going, and they can try out the lessons, they can prepare the lessons, they can really dive in deep and have support from the science coordinator of how to bring that back to their classroom. So that's one goal. Another way is to utilize the science center for field trips, for experimental. So a 4th grade classroom could go to O'Malley into that science center, which I toured very recently and is so amazing, the things they have in there. So that they could go in and use the 3D printers, or they could go in and see the bio lab or the slime lab. So that money will help with that. It will also help strengthen our connection with local science throughout the community. We have a lot of community partnerships, and it allows that. It will strengthen some college and university partnerships to have some college students come in and really be mentors and help out in the program. And to build our own internal mentors of high school students that could help out some middle school students, and in turn, middle school students could be leaders for the elementary students that come up and really strengthen that science connection. It would help with giving some elementary students experience at O'Malley, just to generalize transition part 2, because they've been in the building and they've done some science experiments there. It's really a tremendous opportunity to also, help support our elementary school teachers who have so much on their plate and their time is so tight to fit in science and do more than just fit in, and to do it right, and to bring on the hands-on, and maybe bring the kids into the lab so that they can have the experience there, or come and just train as professionals. And this money will also pay for some time, after school time for them to go and do that, and then go back to their schools and bring that back home. So it's very exciting. It's a new and creative, kind of innovative way to expand science and support it internally. So we're really excited that this grant can do.
And I noticed Amy Donnelly is,
Mhm.
do you think she would like, I know she's very
She might want to.
integral to
So she
all
has,
that goes
yeah,
on at middle
yeah, she
school.
knows all that happens in the Science Center, and I don't know if she wants to speak or not.
Amy, would you like to speak?
Yeah, she just joined us, I think.
She is.
She's on mute.
I'm unmuted now. Hello.
Thank you.
Hi.
We can hear you.
What's that?
I said, we can hear you well.
Oh, great. Yeah, so this is really exciting. This Brace Cove grant, Mr. Hurley, he from Brace Cove approached Greg about an opportunity for a grant. And this was something that was on Greg's plate for a few years to, expand the use of the Science Center as a professional development place and a place for a community to do science. So we worked together with our engineering specialist to write this grant, and yay, we got it. So really excited about this opportunity. We have a great science community at O'Malley. Our teachers learn from each other. We model labs for each other. We support each other in all of our endeavors. Our engineering specialist is like the Peter Pan of science and will make any lab happen that any teacher wants to do. So expanding that model to the elementary school is just another opportunity to move that all forward, and we can all be doing science together.
Great.
Good stuff.
But who do we thank?
So Greg worked with, you said it was, what's that?
Amy,
Amy Donnelly, yes.
Greg Bach,
Greg Bach, and
Dave
was
Brown.
it
Dave Brown.
Dave Brown?
Dave Brown,
Yep.
and Tina Ramos
And
helped
Tina Ramos.
draft it.
Mhm.
GF also supported in terms of thought leadership and connecting with Brace Cove.
Brace Foundation.
Not me.
Yeah.
I know
Amy,
for-
do you know anything more about, either Amy, about the Brace Cove Foundation? So that's, I think, what Laura is saying, because there's somebody we can, I mean, it's a huge grant.
It's a huge grant and we want to give huge thanks.
So the Brace Cove Foundation, the Hurleys are the people that approached us. I can get the information for you from them.
Just want to express our gratitude.
Yes,
Yeah,
that'd
no,
be
it's
great.
fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so wonderful.
Greg?
I had met with the Hurleys in my office, and I forget if he was a tech, whatever it was, he made this money and they moved across, they love it here. And we had thrown a few ideas at them for little grant opportunities. They want to do big stuff. And this is an example of big stuff. So they are a great asset. And here you go, here's an example.
Wow.
Wow.
And I will say this is that part of securing grants is the connections and relationships you make with the folks who are making the grants. And Amy Donnelly really did represent us so very well, first of all, but also really clicked and really connected with the folks in Brace Cove. And so her work over many years, but also her work in putting together this proposal with Grant, obviously, but also that connection that she made in terms of, and their, faith in our team has a large part to do with getting this grant. So thank you, Amy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Amy.
Thanks.
No more questions? Okay, Maria, roll call vote?
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
Berger.
Yes.
Okay. Passes excitedly unanimous. Enthusiastic. Thank you for speaking, Amy.
Great, thank you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of the night. This has been great listening to everyone. The energy and the excitement of all the things that are going on at the schools has been great. And it reminds me a bit of the quote from, was it Alice in Wonderland and the Red Queen, and having to run as fast as you can just to stay in the same place. And if you want to get anywhere, you have to run twice as fast. And that's what it felt like at this school for the last 20 years, that we just keep running faster and faster just to stay in the same place. So this feels like progress, and it's exciting. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and we have a second grant from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education for fiscal year 2023. Grant number 222/325, targeted assistance grant in the amount of $30,000. And I move that we accept this grant.
Second.
So this is the targeted assistant grant from the state. It is targeting both O'Malley and the high school, 15,000 in each. And it's working to support the initiatives that they're having. There are already some curriculum work, lesson redesign. We are going to have Carol Gregory come in at the high school and do some work with continuing with their lesson design and development, how to coach that to be even more impactful in the classrooms. And we're happy to have a little extra money to do that.
Yeah. Questions? Maria, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy.
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
and Mayor Verga.
Yes.
Okay. Next order of business under action is approval of the addendum to the Gloucester Teachers Association contract regarding temporary change to the sick bank language. Ben?
Sorry. I'm not sure what the question is, because you voted on this and you considered an executive session, and this is just about the public vote.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah.
So we voted in executive session to allow for use of the sick bank with COVID-related reasons.
And just a quick summary for the folks who are listening. It sort of acknowledges that there's still a requirement for quarantine, and that it particularly is thinking about newer staff who may not have, or have not accumulated sick days, and maybe it may need them, and it allows the sick bank process to be sort of invoked, so to speak, to consider whether or not a staff member could be granted up to 15 sick days during the course of the year because of COVID-related illnesses and absences. And it's something similar to what we did last year. The change this year is that the process is better, it's more well defined. So there's a little clarity on both our side, administration side, and also the union side. Yeah, it's
Further clarification, these are sick days donated by other members of the union.
right. These are sick days we're making up. The sick bank, process is something that the, it's a, long-standing process where sick days are donated by members. They have a sick bank of a significant number of those accumulated. And the process is, basically the process is an employee comes to the sick bank and the sick bank, which is two union members and 2 school committee members, make a decision on that on a case by case basis.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move acceptance.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy.
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
and Mayor Verda.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously, 6-0. Okay. Next item is discussion and other communication over new business, East Gloucester / Veterans Memorial School Committee update, which now we'll say East Veterans Elementary.
Oh, yeah.
Right, sorry.
Updates.
Yep, gotta do that. Mayor Berger, do you want to give the latest news of what Sue Egan?
Yes, so we did the PF, what's the acronym?
Project funding agreement?
Project Fund, PFA. I signed the other day, as we all know, the lawsuit was thrown out. And so we're able to move along. We got all, Susan Egan got all the final paperwork together. I signed it. We're good to go to start submitting invoices for reimbursement.
Right.
So there you go.
Big deal.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. Thank you.
And they're still building the school as well. We have a school building committee meeting tomorrow night.
We do.
And we'll give folks a more detailed update.
And then we'll have pictures in the next meeting.
Yeah, yep.
Be able to share.
And also, pretty much on a weekly basis, there's a weekly update section on the building website, and pretty much that reports go up every week. It just sort of gives the rundown of what's been accomplished the past week, what's being accomplished the coming week. But yeah, we'll show those photos as well.
And I noticed driving by a retaining wall seems to have gone in. And it's just- What's happening?
It's all happening.
I guess another update related to this and an invitation. So the administration is going to be presenting to the city council at their November 22nd meeting with updates related to the East Vet School, what's going on with the move of Mados over to Green Street, what's the plan for East Gloucester school site once we're done? And if you could sort of come and say, as of today, 22nd, here's what's going on at the building.
Okay.
So.
And we need to be there for the O'Malley windows on there as well, so that's great. Yeah, I think that's really good timing. Great.
Yeah, be a good city council meeting.
Yes, we were competing with them tonight. I don't know who got higher ratings. Because we had a special. Check the Nielsen's tomorrow.
Sam,
I said some new business.
okay?
We're good with that. So I have been approached by a number of parents, and I would include myself in sort of that concerned group, just about the options that are available for school lunch, particularly at the elementary school level. And I realize that a lot of this is probably out of our control, but I think it's worth having that discussion publicly so that the community can just sort of see what and the committee can actually have a conversation about what we can actually do to make some changes about just sort of the how healthy the options are or not. It's pretty staggering when you look at the nutritional facts on the website, what we're serving the kids. And I realize that this is like, I have friends in Manchester, it's happening there, it's not just us. I think it's just sort of a bigger conversation, but I think it's a really important one to have.
So that would be referred to the building and finance. That's one of the topics under that, right?
I don't know, actually.
Huh?
I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was more that we just needed to have food service come and just have a conversation with us about like, this is how the process works because it's a state funded program.
Yeah, so you want to understand what Martha Jo Fleming has for guidelines and requirements.
And like how we choose our food. Or is it even a choice? Right, like I think there's just lots of questions about how much control and choice do we have in terms of how we make those decisions.
And tell me if I'm correct, but I share this, but also, and do we as a district have any, I mean, like Sam said, we may not have much control or any control, but where are there places where we do have any input?
I mean, from the way food service is managed and
The choices that are available.
The choice, it's not about management, I think it's just about content, but it just, does the Gloucester Public School District have any options in what we serve students for, as for school lunch, or is this all sort of handed down to us by the funders, basically?
Yeah, so, and also interesting, looking at more nutritious food options, right?
Yeah, and like what control do we have
Yeah.
as a district?
Right, understanding how it's
Explore
done and what options there are and, you know, other options for more nutritious, other more nutritious options.
we'll figure out where that can go. in the
Yeah,
agenda.
I don't really know how that works.
I just want to remind everybody, next Wednesday is the ceremony for the Sawyer Medal Awards. That'll happen at 7 o'clock.
Who's speaking at that one?
She's on the program. That's all.
Yeah, my mom-
You are.
No one asked.
Right.
Yeah, no, you're on
No,
the.
I mean,
Last
they
year
assumed.
we like sort of divided it up, so I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if we had
Kathy.
We hadn't really
a two this
gone
year.
beyond. Thanks, maybe we should. Okay. All right.
Is there a school committee meeting next week or just BNF?
Just being.
Just being a,
Being before the Sawyer thing, right? The meeting at 5.
And then no meeting.
and Sawyer Medal starts at, sorry, starts at 7?
7, yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah, the calendar of meetings is not correct. Right.
Yeah, that's what,
It is.
Yep.
And our next meeting is Wednesday, November 30th. Okay. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
second,
Maria?
Hudson?
yes.
Ms. Weeks?
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy?
Yes.
Mr. Melvin?
Yes.
Mr. Benito?
Yes.
Mayor Verda?
Yes.
We have now adjourned. Thank you. Anybody who's still in there with us.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Keith.
Good night.